You think family always sees you, until they don't. What would you do if everything you ever valued, every sacrifice, every loyalty, meant nothing in one cold, glittering moment? Hannah had spent most of her life perfecting the art of invisibility. In the Portland house she'd grown up in, she was the invisible sister, the dutiful one, the steady anchor, while Chelsea, radiant and magnetic, glided through life like sunlight. Hannah had learned early on that her parents' love was selective. That approval came in measured doses. And that generosity was for the star pupil, the daughter who seemed to require no coaxing to shine. She loved her family despite this. But there was a quiet weariness, a subtle ache she had grown accustomed to. Her room smelled faintly of lavender and old books, the soft hum of the radiator the only thing keeping her awake on chilly nights. She was a perfectionist by nature, her hands raw from hours of crafting, building, proving herself. Work was a sanctuary, a place where results mattered more than favoritism, where her efforts couldn't be ignored. At 34, she was a senior project manager, respected, reliable, the one who always delivered. Chelsea, on the other hand, seemed to float through life, adored, protected, admired, and yet oblivious to the quiet sacrifices surrounding her. Christmas had always been a minefield of subtle comparison. While Chelsea's gifts were thoughtful, expensive, and grand, Hannah's were often practical, understated, proof of her parents' faith in her reliability, but devoid of passion. She had grown skilled at brushing it off, smiling politely while swallowing small disappointments whole. She had convinced herself that love wasn't about gifts or recognition, but about presence, about shared laughter and traditions. Yet beneath the surface, a layer of resentment quietly accumulated, unnoticed, unexplored, like frost spreading under a polished floor. This Christmas, the smell of artificial pine and wax mingled with the rich perfume Chelsea always wore. Hannah could feel her pulse in her throat, steady, but tense. This was a family who celebrated appearances more than effort, charm over substance. She accepted this truth daily, though it left invisible scars. She had learned early that to survive this household, one must cultivate patience, suppress irritation, and internalize disappointment until it becomes part of your DNA. And so, in this house that both nurtured and diminished her, Hannah honed the skills she would later rely upon: waiting, watching, and understanding human behavior to its very core. The living room was an avalanche of color, glitter, and forced cheer. Wrapping paper rustled, ribbons curled, and laughter bounced off polished hardwood floors. Chelsea, 32 and all smiles, pirouetted like a ballerina, clutching the keys to her brand-new BMW. A red bow glimmered in the sunlight streaming through the front window, a trophy of parental pride. Hannah's parents beamed, the pride in their eyes unfiltered, untamed, as though this was the culmination of everything good in their lives. And Hannah? She sat cross-legged, the hollow weight of a cartoon piggy bank in her lap. Inside were 2 crisp $1 bills. $2. The room smelled like betrayal disguised as holiday cheer, mingling the sharp scent of pine with the soft sweetness of Chelsea's perfume, suffocating and cruel. Her mother urged, "Open it, honey," with a voice too bright to be genuine. Hannah's fingers trembled as she removed the stopper. The bills fell into her lap, an insult wrapped in plastic. "This is the start of your future home fund," her father announced, waving dismissively. "You're responsible with money, not like some people," he added, nodding at Chelsea with a wink. The words struck her like knives wrapped in velvet. It wasn't just the gift. It was the message. Her value quantified, measured, and found profoundly lacking. Chelsea perched beside her, patting her knee with the practiced gentleness of someone used to being adored. "Don't worry, sis. I'll drive you around," she said, feigning sweetness. The Toyota she had bought and paid for herself, the car that had never once left her stranded, suddenly felt fragile, diminutive, a testament to her family's disregard. Hannah's mind raced through 34 years of similar betrayals, moments stitched together like a quilt of neglect. Every skipped acknowledgement, every overlooked achievement, every subtle comparison flared in her chest. The piggy bank thumped pathetically against the glass coffee table as she stood, her voice foreign to her ears. "Excuse me," she murmured. She didn't need to argue, to fight, to explain. The fracture was too deep, too old. This Christmas morning was the tipping point. The moment she realized the damage was not accidental but fundamental, Hannah retreated upstairs, leaving the holiday chaos below. The laughter and chatter of her family floated up through the floorboards, alien and oppressive. She pressed her palms to the cold marble of the bathroom sink, seeking tears that wouldn't come. There was no dramatic release, no sobbing crescendo, just a hard, solid pressure in her chest, the sensation of her own worth being compacted into something small, disposable, insufficient. She replayed the scene in her mind. The BMW, the red bow, the fake cheer, the dismissive words. The gestures, no matter how superficially benign, now felt toxic, deliberate. The catalyst wasn't just the gift, it was the pattern, decades long, finally made tangible, undeniable. This wasn't an oversight or an accident, it was a crystallization of the truth. She was always the afterthought. Her parents' rationalizations, Chelsea's career, image, and reliability sounded hollow now, transparent, rehearsed. She recognized the scripts, the excuses, the self-justifying narratives, all designed to maintain appearances while silencing her worth. The realization hit like ice in the veins. There was no reconciliation to be had, no acknowledgement of her pain forthcoming. The family she had devoted herself to, loved and protected, would never see her as equal. Not truly. By 2 a.m., the decision was complete. Hannah packed only the items that belonged unequivocally to her. A faded teddy bear, a photo album, blueprints from her first project, proof of her autonomy and personal history. Gifts she had spent months selecting for her parents remained, a quiet indictment of their inability to recognize gratitude. She left the house in silence, leaving her keys on the counter, a physical representation of the power she was reclaiming. The highway ahead was empty, the snow swirling in the headlights like confetti for her private exodus. Her phone buzzed with her mother's pragmatic inquiry about an electric bill, a final punctuation to a lifetime of being undervalued. For 3 terrifying seconds, a semi-truck blinded her with snow spray, a metaphor for the life she had endured, disoriented, undervalued, forced to navigate without guidance. But when the wipers cleared, she drove on, unflinching, resolute. Hannah drove through the night, Oregon's highways a ribbon of shadow and snow. The engine's low hum was her only companion. In the silence, her mind replayed decades of quiet betrayals. Every overlooked birthday, every dismissed accomplishment, every time she had been asked to be responsible, while Chelsea received admiration for merely existing, looped endlessly in her thoughts. The quiet anger she had buried for so long now churned, hot and insistent. It wasn't rage born of impulse, it was deliberate, patient, a calculated fire that began to shape her every decision. She thought of her mother's clipped voice, her father's knowing smirk, Chelsea's patronizing hand on her knee. The very gestures that once felt innocuous were now suffocating evidence of inequity. Hannah realized she was done accepting her role in this performance of family. She felt a sharp, almost electric thrill. Her freedom was possible, but only if she abandoned the life she had always been forced to fit into. Hannah's obsession wasn't with vengeance in the dramatic sense. It was with self-assertion, reclamation. The plan began to crystallize. Leave without a trace, sever the ties that had quietly confined her for decades, and build a life on her own terms. She felt a thrill of empowerment, mixed with guilt, nostalgia, and grief. Every road she drove felt like a boundary being redrawn, every mile a declaration that she would no longer be measured by someone else's standards. Her mind rehearsed every scenario. Would her parents notice her absence immediately? Would Chelsea cry, rage, or merely shrug? She imagined herself returning not in anger but in triumph, evidence in hand. A life built meticulously, rich with proof that her value could not be quantified by a $2 token. Each fantasy strengthened her resolve, the obsession not with hurting them, but with becoming unassailable, independent, undeniable. By dawn, a strange calm settled over her. The fire was still there, but now it had direction. She knew she was crossing a line leaving behind not just a house but the illusions of familial love that had sustained and confined her. This transformation wasn't sudden. It was evolutionary, each slight and betrayal adding a layer to the steel that now encased her heart. She was no longer the overlooked daughter. She was Hannah, deliberate, watchful, unstoppable. For the next days, Hannah moved methodically. She packed only the essentials: keepsakes, documents, anything that belonged unequivocally to her. She left behind gifts she had painstakingly chosen, a subtle indictment of how her efforts had always gone unnoticed. Each decision was deliberate, a lesson in control. She could not change the past, but she could define the terms of her departure. She secured an apartment in San Francisco through an anonymous call, transferring funds and setting up her life as if she had been planning it for years. She arranged for her possessions to be shipped discreetly. No fanfare, no chance for her family to intervene. Each phone call, each email, was a lesson in detachment. Every small logistical victory built confidence, reinforcing her ability to exist independently. Mentally, Hannah rehearsed the encounter she might never have, the confrontation with her parents and Chelsea. She visualized conversations, imagined reactions, weighed each word carefully. The obsession from beat 4 now matured into precision. This was not recklessness. This was control. Every detail of her departure and eventual rise was being orchestrated like a symphony. Timing, placement, psychological impact, all meticulously designed. Hannah also allowed herself private indulgences: late-night walks through empty streets, coffee in small cafes, watching the fog roll in over the bay. These moments were quiet, meditative, a reminder that the world outside her family's judgment was vast and unknowable. Each act of preparation, each calculated step, reinforced a growing belief. She could survive, thrive, and define herself on her own terms. Preparation also included reflection. Hannah wrote in journals, cataloging years of subtle betrayals, gifts, and omissions. She acknowledged moments of complicity, times when she had excused slights for the sake of peace. By facing her own contradictions, she fortified her mental and emotional armor. The stage was set. Every tiny action built toward a climactic assertion of autonomy, silent, deliberate, irrevocable. At precisely 2:17 a.m., Hannah made the first move. The house, filled with the soft echoes of laughter from the living room, seemed to hold its breath as she slipped into the night. Her key rested on the counter beside the coffee maker, a quiet symbol of the power she reclaimed. She didn't slam doors or shout accusations. Her withdrawal alone was a forceful statement. Driving through the snowy highways, she felt a strange exhilaration. The road was empty, the headlights cutting through the white blur. Every mile erased part of the old life, every turn a reclamation of space, time, and self. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother about an electric bill, a final confirmation that her absence would be felt, yet misunderstood. She smiled faintly. She didn't need validation, only freedom. Even small acts felt like rebellion, blocking her family on social media, changing contacts, cultivating silence. The power was not in vengeance through harm, but through disappearance, absence as assertion. She imagined her parents waking up to her absence, realizing that the daughter they had overlooked was no longer theirs to command or dismiss. The first move was also a test of her resolve. She felt the temptation to return, to explain, to plead. But the night air, crisp and liberating, reminded her of decades spent being secondary. She had crossed the threshold. The first move was irreversible. It was the power of choice distilled into motion, quiet, unyielding, absolute. As dawn broke, Hannah realized the point of no return had passed. The familiar skyline of Portland faded behind her, replaced by the unfamiliar, sprawling expanse of the Pacific coast. She felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. Every decision now carried risk. She had no safety net, no family to cushion failure. Yet the fear was liberating. Without familial expectations, without the weight of comparison to Chelsea, Hannah's mind expanded. She could imagine a life of her own making, unshackled by decades of neglect. She reveled in the uncertainty, an uncertainty filled not with anxiety but with potential. Every mile driven was a meditation on independence. She allowed herself fleeting memories of family, childhood Christmases, laughter, arguments. But instead of sinking into pain, she reframed them as lessons. Each slight, each favoritism, each dismissive gesture was a building block for the person she would become. The road ahead, once terrifying, now shimmered with promise. Hannah had crossed the Rubicon. Retreat was impossible, and she would never be defined by their limited vision again. Months later, in San Francisco, Hannah's life blossomed. She excelled at work, found a supportive community, and nurtured her creativity. When her family came looking, unannounced, she was ready. The confrontation occurred in a neutral setting, a library, books towering like silent witnesses. Hannah presented evidence, journals, bank statements, meticulous records of inequity. Her parents' faces, long accustomed to masking control, crumpled under the undeniable truth. Chelsea's wide-eyed disbelief mirrored the same guilt and shock Hannah had anticipated. There was no yelling, no dramatic displays, just the quiet weight of truth, delivered with unwavering precision. The collapse was not her doing alone. It was built into the inequities she had catalogued. Hannah's measured, calm revelation exposed the hypocrisy and favoritism, humiliating them with subtle, surgical grace. The family they thought they controlled was gone, replaced by an autonomous, self-assured woman who refused to be diminished. Life continued. Chelsea struggled with envy and guilt, forced to confront her own complicity in the family hierarchy. Parents sought therapy, attempted reconciliation, and faced the social ripple effects of Hannah's absence. Meanwhile, Hannah's world thrived. She received promotions, built deep friendships, and experienced love and recognition without strings attached. Her family had been destabilized, their control evaporated. Yet Hannah did not relish vengeance for its own sake. She observed, quietly satisfied, as patterns shifted. Her disappearance and subsequent success reshaped expectations, proving the power of autonomy and self-respect. Hannah often sat in her sunlit San Francisco apartment, the piggy bank filled with $2 bills on the mantel, a monument not to money but to self-worth reclaimed. She reflected on the cost, fractured family ties, moments lost, and the weight of walking away from those who had defined her life. Yet the freedom, self-respect, and autonomy were unparalleled. She had paid a price, yes, but gained a life she controlled completely. The ultimate revenge had never been humiliation or retaliation. It had been living well, unbound, undeniable. The smallest betrayals had revealed the largest truths. Her value could not be dictated by others. And sometimes the most powerful act of vengeance is the audacity to walk away.